We're scared of an Obama presidency, and I'll tell you why. I'm concerned about someone that cohorts with domestic terrorists such as heirs.
I have to tell you, he is a decent person and a person that you do not have to be scared as President of the United States. Now, now look,
I got to ask you a question. I do not I can't trust Obama. I have read about him, and he's an Arab. He is not. No?
No, ma'am. He's a decent family man, citizen that I just happen to have disagreements with on fundamental issues, and that's what this campaign is all about. He's not. Thank you.
Welcome to another edition of Media Watch, folks. I'm Tait.
And I'm Raymond Peterson.
And this show, of course, because John McCain would have been laid to rest yesterday when we air on Monday, we're paying our own honor and tribute to John McCain, because John McCain, despite some strange behavior in the later stages of his life, was all in all one of the best stand-up guys.
Yeah, he certainly was. He was loved on both sides. Well, loved, I don't know if he was loved, but he was certainly respected on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah, he deserved every bit of praise that they gave him. And so, as far as we're concerned, one of the best ways for us to pay tribute to him is for you to actually hear John McCain in his own words. And so, hopefully, we're giving the control room enough time to cue up that piece of video. And if it's there, let's just go ahead and let McCain speak for himself.
Apologize for it.
More than anything, John McCain lived his life with gusto, looking ahead, ever optimistic about the country he so loved, joyful and resilient and grateful for it all to the end.
I'm the luckiest guy on earth. I have served America's cause, the cause of our security and the security of our friends, the cause of freedom and equal justice, and I've enjoyed it, every single day of it.
Indeed, one of the most patriotic individuals to ever set foot on the planet.
Absolutely. I wish there were more people like him in Congress. He and Obama they definitely had their differences, but they never lost respect for each other. So much so that Obama has been invited by McCain personally to offer his eulogy. And I think that's amazing. I think that says a lot about the man.
Oh, there is no doubt that despite the fact that they ran against each other in a fairly knockdown, drag-out presidential campaign, that John McCain never had any animosity or lack of respect for Barack Obama, which is why we opened the show with that clip. And Barack Obama truly respected John McCain. There are some shots that Souza, the former White House press photographer, who actually has a book coming out called Shade, which contrasts the presidency of Barack Obama and the current occupant of the White House. And when you see those shots of McCain and Obama together, there is so much respect and actually what looks like friendship between those two men, which is why I'm not at all surprised that John McCain requested not just a Republican former president in George W. Bush, but the Democratic president, Barack Obama, his own opponent in that 2008, to be one of the eulogizers at his funeral.
Their relationship was such that a lot of people speculated, especially after Obama was asked to present a eulogy, as to whether or not they had settled differences to the point where they became friends. But they didn't actually become friends, as it turned out. Not personal friends at any rate, because in order for him to speak with Obama, I was reading that he had to set it up with his aides. They made the call to Obama's aides, and then the call was placed. But it's not like, you know, he just picked up the phone and called Barack Obama. They weren't that close. But they did have that abiding respect for each other that made people think that they were personal friends or had become personal friends when in fact they hadn't.
Well, indeed, I can attest to the fact that Joe Biden and
They
John
were
McCain
personal friends. Yes,
were
absolutely.
close friends,
Absolutely.
despite the fact that they were across the party lines. But there was no doubt that there was a serious friendship between John McCain and Joe Biden.
Joe Biden, absolutely.
And which attests to the fact that there were people in Washington who understood that just because you were on opposite sides of party affiliation, you could still maintain cordial relationships, even friendly relationships with someone of the other party, because one, they were good people, and two, productively it was in the best interest of the country. And as far as we can tell, whatever some of his faults may have been, despite the fact that somebody conned him into using Sarah Palin as his running mate, I'm sure he got conned into that, folks.
I'm not sure how, yeah, I'm sure he got conned
I don't
into
think
it.
he
I don't
picked
know
that lady on his own.
how that happened.
But despite even that, I'm going to tell you that for me, John McCain was a guy, despite some of the things he may have voted for in the trench, when it came down to trench time, like that thumbs down vote on the health care when Trump care was trying to steamroller Obamacare, this man always stood up and was counted.
He absolutely was. We need more like him. He'll be missed.
So
Absolutely.
one of the key things that, to get back to business, that John McCain was always strong about was the fact that we needed to get to the bottom of what was going on with the 2016 presidential campaign elections and whether there was indeed any external hacking, etc. And he was strong about making sure that was looked into. And the other guy who supposedly was on that side of the fence with him was Lindsey Graham. But if you're listening to what's taking place recently, there are rumors now that the guy in the White House has now lobbied the Republican members of the Senate to change their support from Attorney General Jeff Sessions. And so the latest thing now, thing now is there may be a push to get rid of Jeff Sessions, and because Don McGahn, the current White House attorney, which is not Trump's lawyer, but it's the White House attorney, has just been pushed out the door by a Donald Trump tweet last week saying, "Sorry to hear that Don McGahn's be leaving us." And Don McGahn went, "Oh wow, gee, wow."
But he was leaving anyway, wasn't he?
Yeah, that's true.
But how
that
did
is, that is
why
true.
was he like, helped along?
He did make noises about being soon to be gone.
Yeah.
He was going to shepherd the Kavanaugh nomination through, and when that was done, he would be probably packing up his bags. Those were the hints he dropped. But after it came out that he'd spent 30 hours with Bob Mueller, and then all of a sudden there was a tweet saying he's leaving. But the key to that is Don McGahn was the one guy, maybe there were a couple of others, like McMaster's and whoever, who basically was telling the occupant of the White House, "You better not try to get rid of Jeff Sessions, because there'll be a Senate revolt, and then there'll be a lot of hell to pay about other problems."
Absolutely, but he must know that that would be one of the worst things he could do at this point in time.
What do you mean? What do we?
Getting
who
rid of
must know
Sessions.
what? Why would that be one of the worst things he could do?
I think it would be. I think if he did that, it would be fairly obvious that he is trying to get. He's trying to get rid of our top lawmaker. Why?
That's the guy that he asked to be Attorney General, so he can always fire him.
Yes, he can always fire him. But
so-
why is
so-
he firing? He's firing him because he won't support him. He won't stop the Mueller investigation.
But that didn't stop him from firing James Comey. So what? I'm just asking. What's the point?
Just wondering. My point is, it looks. It looks extremely suspicious, to say the least.
Oh, as
though he cares.
suspicious-looking
I know.
stuff
Yeah,
ever bothered
yeah.
this guy in the White House? Okay, all right. So there are a couple of things that, as we all know, have been breaking around this guy. A lot of people pled guilty to 8 counts here and there. Manafort got convicted on 8 counts of stuff, and Cohen, the president's erstwhile attorney, Michael Cohen, got found, pled guilty. He wasn't found. He pled guilty to 8 counts of whatever. And so a couple of other people in that particular, close to that axis of power, have asked the special counsel for immunity, like the accountant Weisberger, or I'm not quite sure I'm pronouncing his name, the money man for the Trump organization. He evidently turning into a cooperating witness for the special counsel. There are a couple of other things that have broken on that front as a result of Michael Cohen's pleading guilty. The the Attorney General for the state of New York has filed, I believe, a criminal complaint against the Trump Foundation pertaining to tax problems,
Tax
money,
issues or distribution of funds?
money being used illegally for certain things based on what Cohen pled guilty to.
Right.
So they've also referred those to the IRS and to other federal prosecutors while they launched their own investigation. And then the Manhattan District Attorney's Office is also now looking into the Trump Foundation's use of money during that election campaign and other things connected to Michael Cohen's pleading guilty regarding.
It should be very interesting to see. I'm still waiting to see what the bottom line on Mueller's investigations are. I want to know what has come out. I just think that there's just so much more that we don't know.
That's a major understatement.
Oh, no,
Would you say?
No, I don't mean on what's his name? What's the guy who's in the White House? I don't even remember his name.
Well, that's what they're investigating.
I know.
Russian influence on his election.
I'm talking about the information, the testimony that Mueller has gotten. I think, first of all, I think most of the people that have testified before him have made deals if they've been caught with their hands in the cookie jar, so to speak. I think that Mueller has a lot more that he hasn't exposed yet. I know there's no way you can know. There's no way I can know either.
So I'm not even speculating on stuff like that. What I want to actually talk about though are things that are actually happening that pose. Part of the stuff, these investigations deal with national security and our stuff being, and so there are a number of national security issues that are happening that are not really getting the kind of high-profile coverage. There's one story we can circle back to. You could actually call up the candidate whose national security form was scored, but the UN just came down hard on United States and Saudi Arabia for the atrocities that are happening in Yemen right now. And that's because, according to the folk at Just Foreign Policy, and I'll call up the message, UN investigators say Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have killed thousands of civilians in Yemen in airstrikes, tortured detainees, raped civilians, and used child soldiers as young as 8, actions which are likely war crimes. The report said Saudi and Emirati airstrikes had hit residential areas, markets, funerals, weddings, jails, boats, and medical facilities. They accused Saudi UAE of routinely having failed to consult their own no-strike list of civilian sites in Yemen, including refugee camps and hospitals. The chair of the experts panel that produced the report said, quote, "There is little evidence of any attempt by Saudi UAE to minimize civilian casualties." Now, the reason why we talk about that for national security is because a lot of those Al Qaeda refugees that came out of Iran, Iraq, and stuff are in Yemen, and the young folk who are fighting against the Saudi Emirati alliance in Yemen, those are the ones who are going to be the Al Qaeda front soldiers. Those are the ones that basically we thought we had gotten rid of. But you know who's fueling these Saudi planes and providing these ammunitions that the Saudis are using?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me if
United States of America, okay?
America, yes.
And so when you talk about the long-term national security risks of our involvement in that kind of atrocity-making conflict, then we're not helping our national security very well.
Not at all.
Now, I got something else in my inbox dealing with the fact that there is now an initiative for a major drone base to be built in Africa, somewhere in Niger.
A U.S. base?
Okay. Originally targeted by the Pentagon for a $30 million construction thing that was supposed to be completed in 2016. It has now ballooned to $100 million. And the projections are that it's going to cost $30 million a month to run. And basically, that's going to be the drone frontline war machinery for the United States in its, quote, war against terror. And so our tax dollars are going to the tune of a base that we know nothing about, a secret drone base somewhere in Niger that's costing $100 million when it was supposed to cost 30, and no, it was supposed to cost 50, and now it may run $30 million a month to upkeep. So whether or not that's in the interest of our national security or not, all I know is not very much in the interest of the taxpayers' money.
Yeah,
okay,
no,
so that's a story that's not getting that much front burner
not
things.
heard it before today.
So that's really, really one of the media watch stories that, you know, comes across our desk. We say, let's bring it to our viewers' attention because somebody else is talking about it. Just Foreign Policy is trying to raise the flag on it, but I haven't seen it in too many other mainstream media.
I haven't seen anything of it.
So were you able to dig up the candidate? There's a
Abigail Spanberger.
Yeah, give our folks some background on her.
She's a former CIA officer, and she was running for Congress against, what was the man's name? Where is it? Representative
somewhere.
Dave Bratt of Virginia.
Where's the race?
Virginia.
Okay, not West Virginia, the state of Virginia.
State of Virginia.
And it's either House or Senate.
Well, that congressional leadership, I don't know if it's House or Senate, to tell you the truth. Tell you
well,
in
if it's
second.
a Paul Ryan PAC,
It's a Paul Ryan PAC,
so
so
that's
it's a
probably the
Senate.
House. No, that's probably the House.
Sorry, yes, he is the House. Apparently, her when you apply for a job with the government, you get a security clearance, especially at the CIA
Hey,
or FBI.
you're trying to be a
something
CIA
like that.
man where they give you the deepest background check ever.
Absolutely.
Okay,
absolutely.
so her form.
I mean, they know everything about you from the moment you were born.
Well, they want
the
to.
moment
That's why
walk
you
through
fill
the
out a
door.
form, right?
Exactly. Anyhow, this form was obtained by this political pact that is associated with Paul Ryan, and they released it publicly.
First of all,
To what avail, I'm not sure.
First of all, this is a national security clearance
National security
form
clearance form
that this young lady
Absolutely.
filled out, which is supposed to be held at the highest level of secrecy
Security.
and security,
Yep.
period, right? Okay. So, for stuff that I saw, they claimed they were responding to a Freedom of Information request because she was a candidate. Okay? What?
So you and I have both received Freedom of Information files, and
Yeah.
when you get them, if you can read 3 words on it, the person wasn't an interesting person
Okay.
because they redact.
So right. So you just hit the key word there, redact. When they got her security application clearance form, was there any redactions on it?
Not to my knowledge. I think it was
Okay, so
plain and
there
clear.
it is, folks. All right, so the nub of the story is that here's a candidate. It seems as if, this is something I just discovered earlier this week, because we're taping on a Thursday that's going to air on Monday. And the Democrats have a number of candidates across the country who are former government security people. People who were in the CIA, people who were in the FBI, people who were in Homeland Security, people who all required serious background checks. And if you're a former CIA agent, folks, you get the deepest vetting of any other agency on the planet, to my knowledge. So when you fill that stuff out, it goes into the lower echelons of vaults that's supposed to be held near and dear, right? So you become a political candidate, and folks want the information. And guess what? When we made requests when we were working for ABC News and other organizations, we would get them, not necessarily speedily, but we get them. But when they came back, all those dark lines and all those black pages, that's because redaction. You don't know what they did, where they were, and that's one, to protect other agents and other background or modes of doing work, operational procedures. They redact just about everything. So the thrust of this candidate's anger and concern is that was an unredacted version of her file.
Absolutely.
Everything she put down. Every single little detail of anything she ever did in her life that she had to disclose to the CIA and the people in the government so she could get her clearance was on that form.
Opening her up to all kinds of
medical stuff, anything, you name it, it's in there.
And you know, if she was involved in any covert operations when she was an agent, I don't know if she was, but if she was,
there's a lot of stuff that's
people out there that want to get back at her now have her personal information.
So this was released to the press. The reason she discovered that this was out there was because a reporter, I think it was a Reuters reporter, it may have been an AP reporter, called her up and said, I got this form. Tell me about all this stuff you and she. Well, you have what?
No, but no one published it, did they? I don't.
Hey, the report. It went to a bunch of political operatives that are opposing her. So who knows what they have done with it?
Right.
The reporters were at least smart enough to call her and said,
I don't think an honorable reporter
I
would
got
release
this
it.
stuff. What do you have? And she said, first of all, how did you get it? And where did you get it from? And lo and behold, it turns out it came from the Political Action Committee that's funded by House Speaker Paul Ryan.
Ryan's associated with it. I don't know who funds them.
And they are evidently trying to use that information against her in her election campaign. So the Democratic Party, knowing that they have all these other former federal agents from other agencies like the FBI and other places as candidates, they put out a warning notice to their potential candidates. Say, look, this has happened to this young lady. You need to double check that your former agencies or whoever had your background clearances are not just sending out unredacted versions of your application form, because they have done it to one, they will probably try to do it to others.
Yeah. Just to be specific, it was the Congressional Leader, I'm sorry, I just had that name of the pact. Congressional Leadership Fund was the pact that released that information.
They're headquartered in D.C. or where?
It does not say.
Okay, the Congressional Leadership Fund Political Action Committee.
Right.
Okay, and they released it to the press.
All right, they sure did.
All right. So related to elections, because she's in a congressional election race in Virginia as a Democratic candidate, and I guess her Republican opponent was being helped by this particular pact by getting all this, quote, background info on her. So in addition to voter suppression efforts that the GOP has been indulging, now indulging in leaking classified national security data of opposition candidates in the Democratic Party. But interestingly enough, this, for my money, bespeaks to the fact that these Republicans understand that because of the trouble that the occupant of the White House is in, and all the crazy stuff that he has done and all the illegal shenanigans that folks surrounding with him have been convicted and or pled guilty to, that their midterm election hopes are not looking too good. And so a series of primaries have taken place. Actually, we're taping the day after the Florida primary and the Arizona primary and a couple of other state primaries for governor and House races took place. I don't know if you called up anything on the Florida race.
I was just about to say, it's a major upset in Florida.
Actually, I think we'll segue to that by starting our Being Black in America segment a little early, because on this political race, this is a part of Being Black in America, because the Democratic candidate that upset even the established Democrats in Florida that nobody thought would win was a guy by the name of Andrew Gillum, who's the current mayor of Tallahassee, Florida. And I vaguely remember him having some very cogent and powerful words after the Parkland shooting about the fact that elected officials had failed those young people. And he was phenomenal, bluntly direct, and to quote his opponent, very articulate about how well he expressed his anger about those folks failing the young people. So because he is not afraid to speak his mind on certain issues and will come out and take on the NRA just like he did in support of those young Parkland students. Those were the issues he actually trumpeted while he was in his primary election campaign in Florida. He talked about the fact that it wasn't about politics of division, it was about politics of inclusion. And he was not afraid to say that, yeah, there's misogyny going on and there's all kinds of divisiveness and all that. And I guess he stirred up a bunch of voters in Florida who'd been sitting by on the sidelines. And so even though he was not the favorite, I think he was like the third choice of the Democrats in that race. Yeah, he may have been the number 3 of the 3 candidates. He came out on top in just about all the major counties. And so now this black mayor of Tallahassee is the Democratic nominee for the governor of the state of Florida. And the day after the primary, his opponent, a gentleman by the name of DeSantis, who campaigned on the flip side of that coin, where Gillum was saying, we're not going to be talking about divisiveness. DeSantis was doing stuff like, let's build a wall, teaching my son how to build a wall, et cetera, et cetera.
Oh, and this television commercial.
We're out of time.
We're out of time. We are out of time. How would it